Hey everybody, and welcome to Dude's Brunch, a podcast about breakfast food and pop culture, but not necessarily in that order. Here to talk about four pop culture topics with me this week, as always, we have Tyler, the Meatloaf King, Reed. Tyler,
That's right.
what did you have for brunch today?
Leftover meatloaf. How did you know, Taylor? It's like we had already done this intro.
Through the
Yeah, I
magic
had
of
some
time travel.
had some leftover meatloaf from when Catherine made it on Wednesday. Brought it home. Also had some leftovers from Revolution, which is a great chicken restaurant downtown.
Downtown Cincinnati, Ohio, that is.
That's right,
It's not
because
in every downtown.
that's right. Not everyone is from Ohio.
Wow, foreshadowing. On the other end of Ohio, Sean Giggle Party Evans. It's good to have you, man. What did
Good
you
to
have for
have
brunch
you.
today?
We went to White Waffle, and I had the chicken and waffle sandwich again. Good times. Potato chips, coffee with a little bit of creamer. It's good.
Nothing like family bonding at the Wally Waffle.
Yeah. Hey, everyone loves it in Akron.
Right on. And our first international guest in the history of the show, hailing from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the host of the Cutting Room Floor podcast, it's Casey Ryan. Welcome, Casey.
Right.
What did you have for brunch today?
First international guest. This is awesome. All right. I'm a creature of habit. I do my show on Sundays, and my power brunch is always steak and eggs.
Ooh, dude, that is an intense brunch.
Get it done.
I do my show in the middle of the afternoon, right? So I got to load up, and then I don't generally eat again until dinner. So I, have a good healthy brunch at about 10 or 10:30.
It's legit. I'm usually just waking up. And for my brunch this morning, I made a banana and peanut butter smoothie because it was all I had in my fridge.
That's different. I haven't tried peanut butter with my smoothies yet. I should give that a try.
It's a really good way to get protein and add flavor.
What else do you put in it other than banana and peanut butter?
Banana, peanut butter, milk, Greek yogurt, and a little bit of oatmeal.
Ooh, that Greek yogurt though.
Yeah, Greek yogurt is the key. Thickens it up.
But I don't think protein is what I'm missing in my diet though. I think I've got that covered.
Well, it's like a meal replacement smoothie for me, so I
Okay.
need that protein. Now, we're going to do four topics this evening, as always. You can play along at home on Twitter, tweet at dudesbrunch. You can also play bingo. The bingo board is at dudesbrunch.wordpress.com/bingo. First person to tweet in with a picture of their winning bingo board, Ivan, gets a free prize handmade by one of us. So tonight's first topic comes from our guest. Casey, you wanted to talk about binge watching?
Well, yeah, the sort of the pros and cons of binge watching versus watching week to week. So I thought that would be kind of a fun thing to discuss.
Let's do it.
Okay, I don't know if the group has had a chance to take a look at that video I sent around, but a couple of years ago, Kevin Spacey, who is one of the actors I admire a lot, gave a speech right at the height of the House of Cards popularity when he was speaking at the Edinburgh International Television Festival, and he was talking all about traditional labels and whether or not it mattered if somebody sat down in a 2-hour format in a theater or whether they watched it over the course of an entire weekend. And his basic consensus was that traditional labels for entertainment, whether it's TV or movies, don't really matter anymore. What people are craving is good storytelling, and they're willing to take it in any format that's given to them. They want good stories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'll throw it to the group. Do you guys have a preference to watch it week to week, or do you like to open all your presents at once?
I'm an open all your presents at once kind of guy. Netflix is like the greatest thing for me. I binge House of Cards. I watched that entire third season in one sitting. Done and done. 13 hours, knocked it out. First day.
He lined up his Mountain Dew bottles next to the couch. He was ready.
I don't know. What do we consider binge watching? Is that like the whole show in like a weekend? Is that like 4 episodes in a day? Like what's?
Mm-hmm.
Well, basically, being able to, any other sort of condensed thing other than, watching one episode a week the way that everybody would have had to before.
Mm-hmm.
Making you wait to get the next chapter in the stories.
Well, I would say I'm like a sort of a middle ground. That I don't necessarily want to watch the whole thing. I like just like if there's like a particular like cliffhanger or like something that like happens, you're like, okay, what is that? I didn't get enough of a taste of the episode. I want to watch like maybe another episode. Because especially as someone that watches anime, I'm like, this wasn't exactly a satisfying episode. I think I need to watch another one to kind of move things along a little bit.
See, for me, it's like it depends on the style of show it is. So I've been watching Master of None this weekend, the new Aziz Ansari show, and I'm binging that. Like, it's kind of designed that way. It's a Netflix original, and it's a comedy. Like, for some reason, I can binge comedies really easily. But, like, Fargo, I have to watch week to week because I love the anticipation of not knowing what's going to happen next. I think any kind of scripted drama like that, like when I watched Twin Peaks on Netflix last year, I would watch, like, an episode and then take a couple of days and then watch another one. Because I like having that time to, like, think through what's happening. But I don't know that I would do that with, like, 30 Rock. If that makes sense.
I think that Taylor, you raise an interesting point, but I would ironically flip to the other side of the coin. I think that there are certain comedies that are particularly have a dry sense of humor that wouldn't necessarily work in a binge watching format. The best example that I can come up with is Seinfeld. That's not the kind of thing that I could see myself watching. 8 to 10 episodes over the course of a weekend. You really need the time to go away and think about it and think about why it's funny and look at some of the day-to-day observations that get raised in that show before some of the jokes actually hit home, right?
And that's weird because I've never liked Seinfeld and I've only tried to consume it in binge watching. Maybe I need to watch it week to week.
When was the last time that you watched it?
I was like a freshman in college.
Okay. I really didn't like Seinfeld until I got later into college.
Yeah, Taylor, that was your Doctor Who phase, so that's...
That's true, I was hardcore Doctor Who fanboy back then.
You were into the funk base.
I'm going to catch hell for this, but I've never seen an episode of Doctor Who, not one.
Wait.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to say, I haven't either, but I watched like one episode at summer camp when I worked there with you. So...
It's a love or hate show. And so I can see how you just haven't seen an episode of it and you're probably fine for it. I know I'm going to catch some hate from the Whovian community for that, but it's not for everybody.
But if that gets to the Watch Our podcast, then so be it.
Well, if just for you guys, I will. I do have access to some of them, and I'll have a look at it. I personally, when it comes to drama series, this is a little bit off topic, but I view it as kind of moving into a new neighborhood, and I give it a good 6 episodes to try to figure out where everybody lives and what the lay of the land is before I decide whether or not this is something that I'm going to pursue.
Well, you have to be really careful watching 6 episodes of Doctor Who because you can watch 3 really good ones and 3 really awful ones in a row. That's kind of the way it's still produced. Like, the production team on it rotates so much that it's really hit or miss. But I digress. Binge watching.
So what do you guys want to discuss about it? I mean, what are your own views on it? Do you think that it's helped? Do you think that it's hurt?
I went to a panel last year put on by a bunch of grad students from Bowling Green State in their popular culture studies, and the title of the panel was "Netflix is the New Black," and it was all about different changes to the industry that have occurred because of Netflix. But the best paper there was about Mad Men, and he was talking about how somewhere in like the 2nd season of Mad Men, it seems like Matthew Weiner realized that everyone was buying the DVD box sets and not watching it when it was on AMC. And so he started cutting out all of the scenes right before and right after commercial breaks. And so if you watched Mad Men week to week towards the end, you would see Don Draper opens a door and walks into a room. Commercial break. And then when you come back from the break, you see him open the door and walk into the room again. Because they had just stopped. Yeah, because they had just stopped shooting those like satisfying commercial break endpoints into the show because they knew everybody was going to watch it on Netflix or on DVD, and the box set culture kind of begot what the end of Mad Men looked like, where it felt more like watching a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, I mean, that was the argument he was making in his paper. I think it's a really great development for shows like Mad Men, because frankly, I just want to sit back and let Mad Men wash over me, and I don't want to be interrupted during a show like that. And so I think if you're writing to the format like that, it can be really, really helpful, but you have to be aware of the format when you write.
And I would agree to that. The commercial break kind of takes away from the magic of a lot of the experience, right? Now that we've gotten used to it, I'll concede that. I mean, when I was growing up, I'll admit to this, I'm probably considerably older than you guys are, but it wasn't an issue because people didn't know any better, right? We didn't have anything different, but just in terms of the continuity and making it more like a movie experience and less like a TV one that traditionally would have been consumed. And I think that a lot of the networks have viewed that as a threat.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you actually posted this video. I watched it in its entirety, and I remember when this happened in 2013. I remember watching the clip of Kevin Spacey giving that line about how if you provide a good product and you give it in the right hands and you give it in a way that's like consumable, that people will buy it. That was like, I felt like that was the justification for Netflix right there. Like Kevin Spacey totally buys into them. The fact that like, here it is, this is it. Like you can have your cake and eat it all in one sitting. You don't have to kind of parse it out, and whatever. So yeah, I think, and he made a lot of good points too about. I think you're right. Like the TV industry and the movie industry, they're not separate anymore. I think you have like, I think one show that I really followed really closely was Boardwalk Empire, and how like it really seemed like there was so much movie in that show. Like it almost became indistinguishable at some points when I was watching it, especially because I didn't do it, like I watched it mainly on HBO Go, so it was completely uninterrupted all of the time, and then it stopped and started, like that was it, there was nothing else to it. So I mean, that I just like binge watching, and I binge watched that first 3 seasons in like a matter of days.
I think it also makes things a lot more convenient for people to get back on the bandwagon too if they miss the start of a show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't necessarily have to be left in the dark in terms of trying to figure out or jump in midstream and say, oh well, I don't understand how these characters are all working together. They can go right back to ground zero and start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting point, because then you also you both gain and lose the point of like bad seasons. So you look at a show like Parks and Rec, where almost everyone would agree that the first season just isn't good. Like it was trying too hard to be something that it wasn't. Or you look at Community season 5, I think it was, the one when they came back from being canceled. I think as a week-to-week watcher, I was more prone to watch those episodes. But now I routinely tell people, oh, you want to start watching Parks and Rec? Start at season 2.
Yeah, I'll throw an example that kind of stung me a little bit. Was my wife and I were both huge fans of Sons of Anarchy, and we. What? Okay, somebody's growing.
No,
right?
don't. I just how that show ended was like, I wish they would have kept it going.
I wish they would have kept it going too, but season 3 almost lost me.
Yeah, you're right.
Where they went to Ireland, right? It was just long and tedious, and you just kept waiting for them to just somehow give these guys a boot in the ass and get them going.
You're right.
So, do you think, like, can we skip over seasons now if we live in a binge-watching world? Is that okay?
I think it's a lot more conducive to a sitcom where some of the plot lines are a little bit more compartmentalized, right? That really, the stories themselves are a little bit more contained. When you're watching a drama, I think that's a little bit harder. That you kind of have to tough it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Casey here. I was just thinking like Sons of Anarchy is a really good example of this. I know that you guys probably haven't seen the show, but I feel like if you missed like any parts of the seasons of that show, you were probably left behind. Like there'll always be things that you don't understand. There's a lot of like power play relationships there, and the drama is pretty like interconnected within the whole motorcycle club itself. So missing that because it was, I feel like it was done. It was the same with Mad Men because it's done in a more cinematic-esque way, where I think it makes it a lot more difficult than, like Casey was saying, like we have like a serialized, compartmentalized episode of like bleep 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 bleep, and so the characters kind of develop, but it's not together as much. It's not.
I guess that's true, because if you look at a show like Friends, for example, you can sum up whole seasons of Friends by saying, well, Chandler and Monica got married, and like that's all you need to know to jump in at season 9.
Yeah.
So.
But it also depends, though. Like I'll throw another example where I think with a drama that it would be okay to skip a season is something like Dexter, right?
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Where you've got one narrative that goes for the entire season, and basically each one of those seasons he was tracking basically one guy.
Right.
So, whether you didn't like the Doomsday Killer or whatever it is, I don't think anybody out there would disagree that Lithgow as the Trinity Killer was probably the strongest season of that show. But that is one thing where you can pretty much pick up with minimal disruption in terms of okay, this guy doesn't get along with that guy at the end of that season, right?
Yeah.
And because very little of the action revolves around the interplay, between the other characters like that. It's really about the hunt for the one guy.
And I think maybe like a show that might be, I'm trying to think of like exceptions if there would be one out there, and I think maybe True Detective might be a good one where I don't know if anybody, I don't know,
Yeah,
has watched both seasons, but I felt like when I watched the first season and the second season, with the exception of having the same name, that's really
it's
kind
an
of
anthology series, so
okay.
It's kind of designed to do that. The same thing with like Fargo and American Horror Story.
Right.
Exactly. The American Horror Story. American Horror
watch.
Story is another good example because that has, one season has, you've got the same core group of players, but one is mutually exclusive from the other in terms of what the characters are.
Right. But I think if you watched season 2, you could watch season 2 and not need to know anything about season 1. But I feel like if you watch season 1, this is going to kind of move into the realm of like my opinion of the show, you might be disappointed in season 2.
I think disappointed is a strong word. I think it's just these anthology shows are really interesting, and I'm sorry, Casey, I'm like kind of taking your topic in a different direction, but
it's fine. This is your ballpark, man.
Thanks, man. I think Fargo is kind of interesting in this way too, where you do one season of an anthology show, and it's insanely popular. So then what do you do in the next season? And, American Horror Story has had its bum seasons, and I think people are looking at that example and going, well, how do we retain elements of the first season and do something different? So True Detective, you still have, the alcoholic cop and the straight-laced cop. Mm-hmm. But then they threw in a third cop and like 20 more characters to make the narrative bigger.
Mm-hmm.
In Fargo, the first season was really kind of claustrophobic as well. You had like 4 main characters and then like one crime, essentially, and there were other crimes related. The second season of Fargo is about a gang war, and so you have both sides of the mafia, and then you have characters in the police department, and then you have innocent bystander characters, and it's like there are people everywhere. And so I think they're just trying to take these worlds and expand upon them in the second season and make them a lot bigger to try and keep the viewers. And I don't know if that's a smart tactic. I'm almost wondering maybe they just keep doing what they do well.
Yeah.
And because people are going to watch it in a binge on Netflix eventually anyway. And so if they skip over a whole season, like that's millions of dollars that you just wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel like a sound argument? I'm not sure.
Sound as anything else I've heard tonight.
That's fair.
Guys, I hate to do this to you, but I got to bail because I got an early start tomorrow. So, but this has been a lot of fun. It was a pleasure to meet all 3 of you. And
yeah. So before you go,
you're more than welcome to come on my show, in the coming weeks if you'd like to do that.
Absolutely. And can you tell our audience where to find you and where to find your show?
Sure. So it's the Cutting Room Floor. I'm broadcast on the Mix Network. That's the Mix with 2x's.fm. I'm on live on Sundays from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock Eastern. And then I post all of my stuff on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/CuttingRoomMRB. Or the best way to get a hold of me is on Twitter, at CuttingRoomMRB. I like to say if you've got a story to tell or a project to sell, and I want to hear from you.
Cool. Very cool. And we'll be in touch about coming on the show probably sometime in January.
Not a problem, guys. Wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much for coming in, Casey.
No problem. Have a nice night.
You too.
See you, man.
So, one final note, because I literally said nothing during that entire conversation. Because clearly I have no
you're not
connection.
a TV guy.
Yeah, I'm an anime guy, and even then, I'm a casual anime guy because I just watch YouTube because I'm a fucking scrub. But there's lists out there that are like, these are the episodes you can skip of anime. Like, these are the filler episodes that dumpster garbage. And like, as like a kid, when you're watching it, like every Saturday morning, you're getting up, you're getting ready for the new episode of Digimon, and you're like, nothing even happened. And like when I sort of like binged watched it with Catherine. She's like, I would have hated to wait an entire week to watch the next episode because nothing happens. So I think that sometimes like those shows are kind of almost bad. Sorry, Catherine started talking to me about it. Kind of bad for like the binge watching craze because it's like it almost defeats the purpose because an anime is sort of almost designed to like fend off the fans long enough while they come up with a new story and like to catch up with the manga. Because most of them are like adaptations of like books. So and if they're still writing the books and they're putting that out still.
It's very much like the soap opera where you're shooting so many episodes that you run out of plot, and
right.
Then what do you do?
And Catherine said, well, you could talk about how we space out Digimon with breakfast. Oh, yeah, so basically we watch Digimon when I come over at breakfast time. So pretty much we're replicating the effect of, like, Saturday morning cartoons, except we can watch more than one episode.
Well, this is a really interesting discussion, and it sounds like, if I had to guess, this will probably turn into an article on the site, maybe like a group op-ed where each of us voices our opinion on binge watching.
Sure.
So be on the lookout for that in the future, and we'll try and get Casey's input as well, because he has a lot of really good thoughts on this.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, we do have more topics to get to, and I want to move on to Tyler's topic.
Right.
So,
okay.
Tyler, what do you have for us this week?
So I'm going to do a little screen share, whatever. Okay, cool.
Be aware that you won't be able to broadcast your screen share to the audio listeners who can't see us right now.
That's fine. They're going to know what's going on. Okay. So, this is just the image of just the posters in case the listeners haven't seen it yet. Okay, so my topic for this week is a poster series that I picked up during Adventure in Design's 12 Tubes of Christmas sale, another like design podcast. And so they had Ty Mattson on, and he was sort of talking about this poster series he did. These officially licensed Star Wars prints done in a mid-century modern style. And so what I wanted to know is, do you think these scenes accurately represent the films? Do they need to? Any scenes you would like to see included?
Okay, so first let me say that when I looked at these on my phone, I almost bought the collection of all of them, because mid-century modern is my favorite aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I think they represent scenes I wasn't expecting, but at the same time, they're scenes that make sense to represent graphically, and so I'm totally okay with all of them. My favorites are A New Hope, Luke against the moisture farm with the twin set, because that's so iconic. For Empire Strikes Back, I love the dismantled C-3PO. I wasn't expecting that, but it's fantastic. And Return of the Jedi, as much as I hate them in the actual movie, the Ewok poster is freaking sweet.
Mm-hmm. Sean, what do you think? Which ones do you like? Do you think they represent the films?
I don't know how much I want to say about this because I actually have an article that's going to come out on Monday morning that is particularly about this movie.
The Star Wars franchise or the new Star Wars movie?
Pretty much the whole franchise, and particularly tilted towards the new movie and why I don't like Star Wars or care about Star Wars.
Uh-oh.
Pew pew, shots fired.
So when I looked at them, I thought they were graphically really cool, but I could really not give a crap about the subject matter.
Okay, well that's fine.
But from an aesthetic standpoint, they are super awesome. And if they had subject matter that I really was attached to, I would definitely consider getting them because they're really at a decent price. And the fact that you're having like a screen print that is like super awesome, designed very well, is cool.
For everybody, we'll put the links in the show notes, but you can get a 3-print set for $40, which is insane for unique screen prints. I mean, that is so cheap.
I mean, they're 8x10, but also you can get the 18x24s for one for $50, but you know, whatever.
Which again is not bad at all.
I would say the real value is in the 8x10s, but I'm also I'm more in it for like the art, to like just kind of to have it, not necessarily to have like the I don't know. I don't think I need 18x24s right now. I don't have the space for it.
Yeah, it's all about the space you have in your home. But anyway.
Right. Okay, so Taylor said that he did not see any scenes that, or like there wasn't any in particular scenes that you would have liked to have seen included.
Outside of the ones they had, I don't think so. Can you scroll down to the gallery of all of them all together so that I can have a look real quick?
Oh, it's kind of like I should have it up there where it's.
You don't.
Like, it might be a lag. Whoops.
There was a particular scene that I was looking for in A New Hope. Oh, I remember what it was. It's the Millennium Falcon going into the Death Star, like on the tractor beam.
Oh yeah.
That particular shot where you just see how big the Death Star is in comparison to our heroes in their tiny little ship.
Mm-hmm.
That always had like a really big impact on me as a kid because when you first see the Death Star, it's like, oh, it's this little gray dot in the sky. That's not scary.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get up close to it, and you're like, oh wow, this is really massive. That's really intimidating. So I would have liked to see that shot. I think it's graphically very strong and very indicative of the series. But I'm really happy with the shots that he did pick. So
yeah. The idea, from what I heard from the interview, was that he wanted to find the scenes that he felt were scary to him as a child. So he was trying to find the scenes that he felt particularly like striking, not necessarily for the visuals, but like from his like memory of like watching it as like a child. And I would say that those fill that role pretty well. I would say they're definitely memorable. I guess. I don't know. It's interesting because I'm like, well, C-3PO just kind of like being dismantled, I feel like isn't like exactly like a moment in time in the movie that I would say is like the best part of the movie, but I would definitely say it makes for a good print.
Well, and it was a big deal at the time because C-3PO is like one of the most identifiable characters. I mean, he's the first human voice you hear in the movie. That was actually like Star Wars trivia moment. There was a big issue when George Lucas first took the film to the studio. Sean's shaking his head, but no, seriously, you'll appreciate this, Sean. The first characters in the film are R2 and C-3PO.
Right.
And the studio execs hated that because they weren't people. And they said, George, you can't open a movie with no people in the first shot. Nobody's going to understand what the hell's going on. And George Lucas, being George Lucas, was just like, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And he did, and I think that makes the beginning of that movie probably one of the most powerful parts of the first movie, is that like we don't actually see Luke Skywalker until like 25 minutes into the movie.
And that's completely okay.
Yep, pretty much.
But okay, so is this art style for you? I believe we've basically already answered this question for Taylor, but do you feel like these kind of reflect Star Wars in a way that you would expect? Is it unexpected? Would you ever like think of this combination? And specifically, I guess, do you feel like the type it doesn't work because it's not using the Star Wars like official typography at all? It's using like this very like throwback mid-century modern style typography.
Yeah, so for audio listeners, it's using the sorts of type you would expect on a late 60s, early 70s concert poster. So think of like, not Woodstock posters, but like, you know, the Doors album covers and posters of that era. I'm pretty sure the title font they use in a lot of these is actually the same font that's on the cover of the first Doors record. But no, I hadn't thought of it before I saw it, but now that I've seen it, it feels like it makes sense because it's contemporary with when the films came out. I mean, the first movie came out in '77, so that's kind of like the tail end of mid-century modern, but I still think that counts. And so it feels contemporary to me.
Mm. John?
Yeah, no, it's great. I love the design. That's not anything. I love the design. I just don't really care for the subject
He
matter
just
that
doesn't
much.
give a fuck about Star Wars.
Read my article, you'll see why. I think I'm pretty justified in saying it. So.
Well,
Because you had a boring childhood, Sean, we understand.
well, to be fair, I would say that I'm not a huge Star Wars fan either, but I had to buy them because I think it does such a good job of presenting the sort of almost like your memory of those things that happened. Like, I don't know, like for me, I don't ever really want like a direct representation of something in like a drawn image. Like, I don't want realism. I don't want anything involving that because that's sort of like not how my brain thinks.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I'm liked the abstract because like if I wanted a direct like representation of something, I would just take a photograph. So it's like these are, I feel like they're more, they capture more of the essence, more of the memory, more of like the feeling of these events more than you know, like maybe like a half-toned like screenshot of the events that happened.
Yeah. Like, okay, so if, like, I don't know, to make myself relevant in this conversation, if he wouldn't have done Star Wars and he would have chose subject matter that was more enticing to me, like he would have done Planet of the Apes, or he would have, to talk about like an older movie, or he would have done like The Martian, I would be really attracted to these posters. I am totally astounded with how beautiful these posters are. Aesthetically, they are awesome. It's like I don't want to. I'm not trying to like crap on him at all.
So no,
It's great.
Let's dive deeper down into that, Sean. So like a movie from your childhood, like you think about the scenes that like really strike you, that scared you, or that interested you. Is there one in particular that you would want to see represented in this style?
Any of them, really. I think he's great. I would like to see how he interprets almost everything. I think particularly like my closest one, like probably one of my top 10 films I've ever seen. I would like to see how he does Lawrence of Arabia. That would be awesome.
I was not expecting that from you. Wow, Lawrence of Arabia. Look at you showing your culture.
Read my article. I hate saying that, but like.
To be fair, in this, we actually can take a look at other things that he's done for like movies or TV shows, because he's done Breaking Bad, some stuff for Discovery Channel. He's done Lost. He has a Dexter poster that I'm currently displaying. That if you can see, that's okay. If you can't,
I love the Dexter posters.
So,
Sean, what do you think?
No, I like it. That's what I mean. Like all of his other work is really great. I really like it. It's really just a subject matter that I'm like,
right.
Like the Breaking Bad ones are fantastic. I'm totally down for. Even I'm not a big fan of what's that show? about the nerds that all grow up together and
Oh, Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, like I hate that show, but it's a cool representation of that. It's like I said, like I just what is that? What is the shark supposed to be? Oh, it's Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
So are you kind of non-literal like Tyler? Like you would rather see these emotional representations than an actual screenshot from the thing framed on your wall?
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's nice.
I agree. I mean,
Well, 'cause it
don't
gives
get me
it-
wrong, like I enjoy photography, but I love in my house having like works that kind of take me out of it and like make me think about the thing.
Mhm.
That's why I love the movement towards more expressive concert posters that we're having right now,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes me think about the energy of that band rather than like, well, it's the same press photo of Matt and Kim that I've seen since their album came out. Like, that's boring.
Right. Because yeah, especially their newest album. I was like, they didn't have like their cityscapes that they usually do. Their weird like photocopied like album art style.
Which is weird because Kim makes those.
Oh.
She makes those by hand. That's all like hand-cut collaging. And then the new record is a photograph.
Yeah. So that's pretty disappointing, but
Yeah. But that's okay. The album's still good.
right. So I guess we could just go on to the final point of, do you have a favorite set, like do you have a favorite series of like images from the movies? Do you have a favorite single image? And if you had to mix and match between all the 9 posters, what 3 would you pick?
I already said it, but my 3 would be, ironically, the ones that you have displayed on screen right now. It would be Luke on the moisture farm, and then the dismantled 3PO, and then the Ewoks.
Ooh. John's thinking about it.
So it was of the 3-pack, and then the single one, and then the ones that you would make.
Yeah.
Probably the New Hope set would be my choice, just because it's gold and black is really aesthetically pleasing to me.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite one would probably be the Tusken Raider. Once again, very aesthetically pleasing.
That is a beautiful poster.
And then my 3 topic would probably be A New Hope, Tusken Raider, New Hope, Burning Homestead with the blue, and then I really like the Return of the Jedi. The only reason I like that is because it reminds me more of a poster for a Hitchcock Vertigo than it does
Oh,
Star
the red
Wars.
and black one?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So,
See, that's interesting. I definitely would say the Ewok is definitely probably. I guess I'm gonna start with my mix and match. I'll say the Ewok, the Empire Strikes Back with Vader. It's pretty much between a Tusken Raider and C-3PO. I don't know. I think just to be different, I think I would say C-3PO. And I think, I would say that the Hoth poster in The Empire Strikes Back is probably my least favorite, or one
I
of my least
agree. I
favorite.
think it's the worst one.
Mm-hmm.
The ice cave where Luke's hanging upside down. Yeah, I'm just not about that.
Yeah. It's between The Empire Strikes Back and probably Return of the Jedi. I don't know why A New Hope doesn't really like gel with me too much. I feel like it doesn't.
it looks like an Argyle sweater with a man on it.
Yeah, it does. You're right. The New Hope one with the cantina and the severed arm, that pushes all of my buttons of things that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a diagram, everything is pictographs, it's a grid. These are all things that I love,
Mm-hmm.
but in this particular incarnation, I am just not about it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's because everything else is equally as satisfying, but it just feels like it has more action. It's very static.
I agree.
It doesn't really feel like it invites you into like this scene. It's just kind of like, look at these objects.
And I think maybe that's our problem with the Hoth one too, is like it just kind of sits there on the page. The other ones at least come out at you.
Yeah.
I think it's
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it's important to note that in the Vader one in the Empire Strikes Back that the black is then printed over again with the red to make it even darker, which I think is what kind of makes it striking for me. I think that it might just be like my printing like junky kind of like sensibility that gets off on like overprinting. Because I think that's really the one that does it the most. I think in this set is that one. So that's probably why that's one of my favorites. I think it is my favorite.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That one seems to be by far one of the most layered of the screen prints when I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have like the gray on the bottom, and then obviously the white, and then Vader's helmet, then the hand, then the red.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And then the black, and then you did another white over to have the logo and the white line that goes across everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an intensely deep print there.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, now you're making me want to change.
No, I still don't like it that much. My question was going to be, do you think that the you can appreciate something and not think that it's like amazing? That the gold in the CP3O poster and the Tusken Raider, it looks like it's a different shade.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to look at it twice. Yeah, it's more of a brown in the Raider poster.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that bothered me so much. I was looking at it, I was like, is that the same thing?
Real talk, though, I'm probably going to buy these for my new apartment. Like,
Nerd.
come at me, bro. All right, Tyler. Do you have anything else on that?
Not really. I'm just glad that we at least somewhat enjoyed it, even though Sean doesn't like Star Wars, which is fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's it.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at this Inception we have going on right now.
Oh. I don't know what I just did.
You need to turn off screen sharing so we're not in Inception mode.
Okay. Whew.
All right. So our third topic this evening comes from Sean. A little bit of follow-up. For the first time, we're finally doing some follow-up on this damn show. Follow-up from last week. Sean wants to talk about Legos on the black market.
Okay, so last week I did kind of make a mistake. I think I said that Legos were like one of the top 10 black market items in the world. That is totally wrong. I couldn't find any evidence to support that. I thought I had read that somewhere, but clearly I'm just creating an importance for Legos in my own head. So this is what, for everybody playing bingo, I named this one Lego My Lego. Gotta get that pun in there. So that's
I was wondering why
that
that was what the title of the document was.
Yeah. Try to be all creative, Put a little fun in this, little literary fun time here. So I posted an article that will be up on the website. I read a lot of these articles. It was probably my favorite. It was the $260,000 stolen in a Lego recovery and 2 U.S. busts. Basically, to sum up what a lot of the articles are saying is there's been a lot of Lego heists on the rise of people going into Toys R Us and toy stores and just loading up carts and bringing them out full of Legos and dumping them in their car and then going on Brick Finder and totally just ditching them. It got as complicated as people changing barcodes online to kind of scam other Lego builders and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. I guess I think of Lego as a cherished childhood memory of hours and hours and hours just sitting in front of blocks building and imagining things, and not as an item that's covenanted and criminalized because of that particular fact. So enough about me.
Let's talk about
What is your relationship with these magical bricks, guys, dudes?
My relationship with Lego was that for the first 10 years of my life, my job was I want to make Legos. So, needless to say, I am not working on Lego. However, I would love to have started working on it because I think the time kind of became right within the last few years to kind of start working with 3D modeling and those sorts of programs, 3D printing. I think had like stuck with like an AutoCAD focus and like did like some like illustration and drawing, I probably could have worked for Lego. Unfortunately, they're in like, I forget, where are they based? They're in some Eastern European country. Yeah. So
I think it's Denmark or Norway or something.
I'm sure they have like American offices that also do stuff. So I've basically been playing with Lego since I came out of the womb. Also Sonic the Hedgehog.
So I didn't pick up Lego as early as Tyler, but I had Legos basically for as long as I can like remember. And it started with like the big chunky Legos. I forget what they're called.
Duplo.
Duplo, yeah.
Duplo blocks.
I had Duplo as a kid, and I got into Lego, but very early on, I think my family kind of realized that we weren't going to be buying Legos by the set and like building the set. So like I had a couple of my better sets that I kept together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, once you built it once, the Legos get dumped into a Lego box so that you can build ridiculous multicolored monstrosities with. And I remember going to yard sales and buying other kids' Lego boxes that they had gotten too old for, to the point where I had like 2 toolboxes full of Legos in the different compartments, like sorted with different types of the little tiny pieces and like people parts and stuff. I had so many Legos that in the end, when I went to college, my mom just gave them away. She didn't even want to like try selling them at a yard sale. She was just like, "Get these out of my house."
That's insane,
No!
and I am offended.
No.
I don't have any of the only Legos I have now is a Lego caboose from a train set that is on my bookshelf at home. That's the extent of my Lego collection here in my 20s.
I would get a gun.
Those are like
harsh,
family. Those are like family heirlooms. You don't just give those away.
Well, we threw away all the boxes and the instructions, and so it's literally just bricks.
That's
Who
the
cares?
best part.
I don't know.
Haven't you seen the Lego movie?
I have seen the Lego movie, and I loved it, and my mom didn't understand it, which is probably why she threw away my Legos, because my dad and I both loved it.
It's a good thing she makes good meatloaf. That's not a threat, I'm just saying.
For the record, now that Tyler has threatened my mom before the show, I offered for him to come over and have meatloaf with my family so I could show that we make better meatloaf than he does. But maybe I'm going to rescind my offer now.
Listen, you should be mad too. She threw away your Legos. Lego. You don't put an S on it.
You don't?
My Lego containers we had a bunch. We still have them downstairs. I looked down the other day when I was getting a board game for Thanksgiving.
Your house, actually.
They have they're actually in a bucket that looks like a Lego that you can stack on top of other buckets that look like Legos. And then we have a few of those Christmas popcorn containers the big tins that used to get like popcorn in. They are chalked to the top of Legos. Like everywhere Legos. And I have all my models still. They're all downstairs. I just rebuilt one about 2 months ago. I found it. I was like, oh, I'm going to see how long it takes me to build this if it was as difficult as it was when I was a kid. Not as difficult, thankfully. But still a lot of fun. Now I took it all apart and put it back in the box and took it back downstairs and put it away.
See, I was all about not using them for their intended purpose. I mean, I built it the first time, but I was very concerned about mixing and matching and making like the coolest looking guys, because it was like they would have like Shogun armor. They always have to have a cape because the capes are awesome.
The capes were the shit.
So you have to have like the pauldrons. You have to have a cape. You have to have a helmet. You know, if you have a plumed like knight helmet, that's even better. You know, you gotta have a lightsaber and like a shield. You gotta have a horse. You gotta have your banner for your horse. And it was just all about like me almost making like these stories up about like these different characters and having them fight.
Almost. There were always stories.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
It was always a conflict because I had like ninjas and space and knights and like I got like a bunch of town stuff for a while because I was really gelling with that. But I think I just wanted to then destroy the town. I think that was the idea.
Oh my God. When I reflect on what I build a lot, it's no wonder that I ended up studying political science. Like, I am like born to be a bureaucrat. Like, I used to make the stupidest stuff. I made like a toll booth one time, or like an airport, or like a zoo parking lot or something. I would make like the stupidest stuff and just love it. I'd build little cars to fill up all the parking spaces and just like drive all around and pull things and open up gates and
See, that's funny because as a kid, I would like build castles and forts and stuff and do kind of like Tyler did. But as soon as he started talking about town stuff, I'm like, man, it's like Sim City, but real. And adult me is like, oh shit, I need to go buy some Legos and make this city. Like,
And see, that's the worst part is I almost like didn't build them. Like I have like a fear of commitment, and I didn't want to build something too big. You know, I just couldn't do it. So it was always just like using like the scraps of whatever I had and whatever like when I slammed it into the container didn't break, and then, so I would just kind of like jerry rig them back up, you know, try to like keep them pristine so I could keep them as like my play places. It's basically dolls. They were dolls for me. I'm gonna be honest.
This is great. Okay, so knowing that, looking at that, speaking of adult Legos, my next question is, I guess I should start with a comment first. I don't know how long it's been since you guys have been to like a Lego store or a Toys R Us or something to see what models are going for these days, or like looked online to see. But it is crazy high. Like to get a model, you're gonna drop anywhere between $40 and $1,000. And I'm like, it's crazy.
that
right?
hurts me on the inside.
Like, I think you can go to like Barnes and Noble and you can get like the Lego Architecture series, and it's like $50, and it's like a Frank Lloyd Wright house or something, and it's maybe like 100 pieces, and it's like $45, versus going on like higher end models on Lego's website, hundreds of dollars. I think what was it? When I was at the store the other day in Cleveland, I think they had all the Star Wars sets they have back for the movie, and the Death Star was going for like $1,000 to build that thing. It was crazy. It was crazy. So yeah, do you think that the prices for Legos are justified, or do you think that they're kind of like pushing kids out of the market now?
Honestly, go ahead, Tyler.
I was just gonna say, from what I remember, the prices that they're like selling, like maybe like a $30 or $40 set, probably would have been about like the $20 range. So I think that they're probably appropriately priced for the inflation. There we go. Which I think is fine. You know, that's not really I don't think kids are specifically buying Legos. Their parents are buying it, and parents, of course, they got the money to drop for that. Or they're collectors, you know, in their 20s, 30s, 40s that are like, I don't even care how much this costs. I'm gonna buy it regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead, Taylor. I have some other thought, but I have to recollect it.
I would imagine this is probably a direction you're going to go, because as I had this thought, I was like, this is a Tyler thought. I'm wondering if, we always ask on Dudes Brunch, who is this for? I'm wondering if maybe Legos are for us now.
Yeah, I was just about to say that too.
Because kids now are doing things like Minecraft.
Mm.
And that's not to like poo-poo Minecraft. Like, I am fascinated by the things people build on there. But I spend my whole day in front of a computer at work. The last thing I want to do is build something on a computer when I get home. I would be much more inclined as a hobby to spend my Saturday building something out of Legos. And so I'm just wondering if maybe Lego has gone up in price because they've realized that their market now is all the people who grew up on Legos that want to keep doing it as adults.
Mm. My concern with this is that the prices. Okay, so I know that Lego they filed for bankruptcy not too long ago. If I remember hearing that right.
I'm gonna fact check you on that.
Yeah, let me know. But I know they not too many years ago they got rid of half the pieces that they made. like when they restructured, they got rid of all the pieces that they made because they were making like all of these pieces, millions and millions and millions, 14 million or something, and they cut it in half. But that said, what I really liked about Legos was that they were little bits that you could make anything out of, and they were kind of like everybody had Legos growing up. I remember everybody had them, and there was something that was like really cool about that. I remember like people whose parents had train sets, and it was like, don't touch the train set. It was almost like when you watch the Lego movie, and trains are for adults, and they were set at a really high price point. And that was one thing that I really liked about Legos, was that you could do anything with them, and they were really accessible. And it would really disappoint me if Legos became something that was just a collector's items that are like hoarded in people's homes, and that you don't actually get to see. Hands don't get to touch them anymore.
I looked it up, and you were wrong. They didn't go bankrupt.
Oh, they didn't go bankrupt? I know they went. They were in hard times though, weren't they?
Yeah, it did say some things about some cutbacks.
Okay.
Nothing about bankruptcy.
Okay. Thanks for fact checking. I appreciate that.
So
Go ahead, Tyler.
Okay. So back to what I was thinking about. I was thinking about who is this for? I think you're definitely right that it probably is for more adult type people. But I would also say, what was the second point? Fuck, I keep dropping this point that I keep trying to make. Okay, right. About the pricing is actually what I wanted to think about. I would say that a lot of it might have to do with like the fact that they make so many unique pieces for every set. There seems to be like a direct turning away from like these are made out of strictly 4-pip blocks, 2-pip blocks. They're the basic fundamental tools. It went away from like a Minecraft to like a more like specialized, like every part of a Lego set is gonna almost have a specialized piece that you really can't use for anything else. It kind of like evolved from like a very basic shape of things to like more realistic interpretations of things, and that to me feels like a justification for the price increase.
That's a really interesting point, because I do remember towards the tail end of my childhood ending up with like the ninja sets and the futuristic sets, and like they did have a lot of pieces that you could really only use in that one context, and they relied a lot more on connectors outside of the usual like stacking method. And so yeah, maybe they just pushed it a little too far for that price point. Because it always felt very minimal in a way. Like everything had to be made out of squares, essentially.
Minecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just looked up some interesting Lego facts here. And
he says, as his internet cuts out. So, Tyler, I'm curious. As somebody who collects, vinyl toys and things like that, could you see yourself collecting Lego? Like, does that seem like a thing that you could do? I know your dad did train sets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you drawn to Lego in the same sense that he was drawn to those at all?
Yes and no. I would say that the price point for some of these are pretty expensive, because I mean, they're selling singular figures for like $8 or $9. And I'm like, that's outrageous for a single figure, like a guy with some decorations. And I would say that that's kind of corresponds with what I was previously saying, that like it feels like they're able to like put the prices up higher because they know that they're creating unique pieces for each of these different guys. And so they're able to justify that price with saying this is a unique figure that will not be like have these pieces used ever again. But that's almost what I don't like about it. I want a more universal set of things. So I'm just disincentivized from using Lego, I think, the way that I used it as a kid, and that kind of once again makes me not really want to use it. But I mean, it's Lego. I mean, I love it, and I really love what they've been doing recently. Because kind of when I got out of Lego, they were doing like nonstop like parody kind of stuff. Like they were like really into Star Wars, and they were doing like every like movie license they could. And I think that was when their like lowest point was when they were no longer doing like original IPs, and they were doing almost exclusively things based on other shows or movies. And so I do like that they have like a Halloween unique set. They have like the Ninjago McBullshit whatever, which despite being like for almost directly targeted towards kids, I appreciate that they're going out of their way to make original things. And they have some other like creative like owned IPs that they've made themselves that I think are also really engaging too. That I'd like to get into maybe. So I'm happy that Lego is surviving.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way. Like, I'm happy that it's surviving. I don't think I'm going to pursue it that much as an adult. And I think that's fine. I mean, they're going in a direction that isn't where they were when I was of that age. But maybe that's what they have to do in the current market.
Right.
And I don't want to poo-poo their decisions because of that.
Because, I mean, it's like Ghostbusters, Jurassic Park, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Minecraft, Scooby-Doo, Lone Ranger. You know, like, there's all these IPs, and I'm just like, I just don't care about this. They must be getting some pretty good deals off those, though.
Yeah, I mean, they must.
I definitely, like I said, I definitely prefer a much more simplistic version of Lego. Kind of more along like the creator sets that feel a little more high end, which is unfortunate that it's like the more simple ones are like kind of like the more designerly ones and more expensive. But I would probably be more engaged in getting those sets.
Yeah, my heart tells me that I want to build the architectural building sets, but my wallet tells me no.
Right.
So we took a vote, and by we took a vote, I mean Tyler made an executive decision, and I get to go last this week. My topic this week is first world problems. So
as you can tell, you're really upset about that.
I'm more upset about our technical difficulties throughout this episode that if people are listening to it in the audio form, they will have never heard because I cut them all out. I'm upset that future me, which is past me to the audience because time travel, I'm upset that future me has to do a shit ton of editing to make this show make any sense. So, getting past that, let's talk about first world problems. This video came up in my feed. I found it on Lifehacker, but it's originally from a channel I think called School of Life. Correct me if I'm wrong. Links will be down in the show notes. But it talks about different problems we have in the first world and how they are, in some ways, important, even though they may not necessarily be as urgently important as third world problems like, you know, starvation and curable diseases and things like that. And so I want to put a disclaimer at the top of this segment. I'm going to read it right off of what I sent to Sean and Tyler. The video we're going to talk about oversimplifies a lot of things, and it fails to consider a lot of cross-disciplinary factors. I don't want to evaluate the video. I want to evaluate our problems and how we should discuss them with each other. I also don't want this to be like, woe is the first world, our lives are so hard. I just want to talk about how the things that we think of as first world problems, things like, you know, commuting sucks, that feels like a really stupid first world thing to say, but it's actually an extremely complicated structural issue with the way that our country is set up. And it's the kind of problem that if we can start to find a solution here, countries like India won't be facing this problem in 30 years when they industrialize fully. And that's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about these in like terms of we're going to bitch about what we don't like. I want to talk about these problems in like, do we think there's a way to find solutions before other parts of the world have the same problem? So
can the mistakes of now help change and be good for the future?
Exactly. So the first question I had was, there are a lot of like facts thrown out in this video, and if you haven't seen the video yet, you should watch it. Pause the show. The link is in the show notes. Tyler and Sean, what facts in this video surprised you?
Literally none of them. Well, I could say all and none because I'm like, oh, that's alarming, but also, sounds about right.
I'm gonna go with Tyler's reaction here too. Just say that's pretty much what I felt like too. Yeah, overwhelmed, but then kind of like, all right, like.
Yeah, I think the only one that really like alarmed me to a point that didn't feel normal was the statistic about how many people are unhappy in their marriages. I think it was like something close to 60 or 70% in certain countries of people are unhappy in their relationships and marriages. And that seemed shockingly high to me. I was expecting closer to the 40 to 50 range. But everything else, yeah, I was like, that's a big number, but intuitively it makes sense to me.
You know who you can always default to this for? Good lesson about love. I don't need to say his name, but we all know who he is.
Ooh, insinuated inside jokes.
Yes.
So
if I say it, we have to.
The internet's busiest dude's brunch punching bag. But no, in all seriousness, if you ever watch this, we love you, Antoine.
We won't. That's okay.
Okay, so which of these first world problems do each of you most identify with? And I'm going to list them off in case you forgot. Happiness, stress, property troubles, fatigue, relationships, loneliness, or ugliness.
The first half. Because I'm in my 20s.
Let's see. If you could make a meal out of all of them, no, I don't know. Which one do I most identify with?
Yeah, which one do you most identify with? Tyler says fatigue.
I don't know.
Well, I'll let Sean think about that, and I'll talk about it. Yeah. So I would say fatigue is probably my number one thing because, as an example, I fell asleep at like 4 o'clock because I was laying in bed, like not like laying in bed, but I just flopped down and was watching YouTube, fell asleep, just couldn't fathom enough energy because I'm usually like hopped up on caffeine all the time. So like the one time I don't have coffee, I'm like just dead. I'm like non-functional. And there's of course times that I wish I could read and exercise and basically all the things that they said in the video that were like causes of like fatigue or general tiredness or like results of that. I felt where I was like, that's me. I would love to read a book if I like didn't think I would fall asleep during it.
Sean?
I hate making this because I really don't like any of them, so I'm trying to like broaden them all out. Probably happiness.
Do you care to elaborate on that or no?
I don't know. Maybe it's weird because it seems like thinking about it, it almost seems like I have to convince myself that it is. Because it's convoluted, and not happiness in terms of like I look at other people and see that they're happy, or like I just want to be happy or something like that. As much as I feel like the opposite, like it just concerns me that everybody else is obsessed with being happy all the time. That like if you just keep being happy that they're like there's like some kind of moral supremacy in being happy all the time. So yeah, happiness bothers me. I think that's like a huge first world problem. So yeah, I identify with that.
That's a really interesting perspective. I wasn't expecting that, but I could definitely identify with that.
I mean, it's like I think happiness is the appropriate one for you, Sean, because you're dissatisfied with the way that people perceive happiness, and that technically you're like happy in your sadness because you're like feeling things. It's like you're not like, fuck, they got my McDonald's order wrong. It's like you're like considering like the real issues in the world and like having real like introspective thoughts, and you're like sad about some things, and it's like, but you're also okay with those things happening because that's how life works. Like, I feel like I understand why you said happiness. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. But did you see how it was like kind of convoluted though? It wasn't like I'm just not happy.
I think it's
like, 'cause I like
really complex for the person that you are.
I like what he said in the video when he opens it up and he's like thinking about first world problems. It's like looking around relative versus looking around in like a larger global scope, and that's how you come about. And I think that's relative happiness is an interesting concept for me. So yeah, I think I struggle with that.
For me, I really identify with what Tyler's saying about fatigue, but partially to be unique, and also in this particular like minute of my life, it's property troubles. I'm trying to move, and there is nothing more first world stressful than trying to move, because you are essentially boxing up everything you own and having to question why you own all of the things you own. And chances are you're taking a gap in income in the process of your move. And on top of all of that, you still have your regular expenses. You still have bills. If you're a millennial, you still have student loan debt. And so it becomes this like, I'm making a decision that will greatly impact my future happiness based purely on material things. Like, I have to make sure that my rent is at a level that I can handle. I have to make sure that my utilities are reasonable. I have to, find a home that I will feel comfortable in. All of this while also packing up my existing home and like getting rid of my financial responsibility for my existing home. And it just creates all of this undue stress that it's a very first world problem. I've realized in the process of doing this, moving is like one of the most universal hated aspects of Western life, yet nobody has found a way to make it easier. And that's so frustrating to me. That seems like a problem we could be solving right now a lot better than solving, like, I don't know, how we track our exercise. But
take that, iWatch.
Exactly. Why don't you make the Apple Watch of moving?
To be fair, Apple's probably not giving a fuck about moving.
That's true. So the video offers 7 problems and 5 solutions. And I'm not saying that I agree with any of these solutions in particular, but because once again, I think like Sean said, these are all kind of convoluted. My question is, out of the 5, and I'll read them, which one seems like it makes the most sense to you or feels like the most immediate change we should make? And they are changing measurements, so changing how we measure ourselves and the world around us, changing the media, replacing religion, changing the curriculum in our educational systems, and rebuilding our cities to build better cities.
Well, I would say, I want to say change the media, but I know how like futile that concept actually is. Just because I know that it's like there's things that are going to be popular and easy to talk about, and those are the things that are going to get the most people interested into them. So obviously, in a perfect world, I would love to just change the way we perceive our news.
Sean?
I'm gonna have to go with changing measurements. And the reason that I say this is because we live in a Western culture is so lives under the doctrine of positivism. Does that make sense? You guys know what that is? It's like the scientific method. And being able to measure things. I think a lot of our conceptions of how we understand knowledge and gain knowledge is understood through concepts of being able to measure them
and compare them relatively to one another and distill them even further into certain truths that can be backed up scientifically through the scientific method. But that said, knowing that this is going on, I just happened to read a really interesting Foucault piece where he talks about knowledge and power. And I know that you probably heard that knowledge is power, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, like my traditional way of thinking about this was like, if you're smart and you're educated, you can't be kind of abused or somehow like preyed upon because you're smart, right? This makes sense. Mm-hmm. But after reading this, he talks about how like creating a set of knowledge allows you to have power over something. So like think about like humanism and of being able, humans are the top beings. This essentially created a knowledge that justifies the power of humans over everything else. It essentially creates like a knowledge of domination. And I think that's when you have that, when you're able to create these measurements create within you psychologically, politically, whatever, interconnected and complex relationships that lets you compare other stuff to people. And then when I look at first world problems, I think a lot of them come in part because of this particularly relates to happiness, is when you look at your life compared to other people's lives, and you have the metric of happiness is relative, but your relative happiness is no longer based on like looking at your friend group or your family or something like that. Your relative happiness is based on watching television and what the Kardashians are making, or whether or not you're a success in your career because you know somebody else who is better networked than you or something like that. So I think that's a good place to start, and that's like, I don't know if I interpreted that passage correctly or anything like that, but that's kind of what I got from it. And so I think it really comes down to measuring things.
I really like your point there. I hadn't considered changing. I didn't pick changing the measures because I didn't know what to change them to. And I think you bring a really good point there about making them less comparative and having broader context. Mm-hmm. For me, I was going a lot more micro. I was thinking build better cities. And I'm reading a lot about this right now, so that's kind of like the bias of my current studies. But I don't know, like, there's something about community that I think is really, really powerful. I think when people exist in communities, and especially when people exist in diverse communities, they just have a better outlook on themselves and the world and their place in it. And having grown up in a suburban community and then moving to a traditionally styled community with grid streets that people actually walk on, and like in an environment where you run into people you know at the grocery store because the people from your neighborhood all shop at the adjacent local store, like, I don't know, that just feels like a very classically human way to live, as opposed to this artificial living that we've imposed on ourselves. And so I think long term we need to change the measures in the media, but short term immediate action item, I think revitalizing our cities could be a good starting point.
Well, I would say also as like sort of like a point two, like a part two, I would say that curriculum I feel like would also be really important. But that kind of feels like in the same reason I would say change media, because it feels like there's a lot of focus on the wrong things. I don't know, just standardized testing in general. That sort of focus on those sorts of like metrics and stuff like that.
So it gets back to Sean's point about measurements, yeah.
Right, and it's like, but who could say no to like all that data you can get? Like, it makes sense like after watching like Gary Vee videos about how he's always talking about how important just getting data on stuff is, like getting metrics, knowing like what people are clicking on, what people are doing. It makes sense that we haven't changed our strategy for the schooling system or standardized tests because we basically already have the metrics in place to like get all the information we need. It just turns out to not be very conducive to actually learning.
Well, yeah, and I think that's really going to be the quandary of our time, is how do we find the balance between data and human nature?
Right.
Like, we can collect as much data on you as we want, but how do we map that to an interpersonal relationship, or do we even choose to? And that's kind of the Gary Vee thing. Like, he collects data, but at the same time, he's in there interacting one-on-one with his community, and he's just using the data to get broad strokes about the community as a whole.
Right.
And
okay.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh no,
I was gonna say something.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was Tyler. Go ahead.
Okay. The curriculum specifically feels interesting to me because one of my friends works at a city school in which the way that she describes it, she basically never actually gets time to teach anything because students are constantly just cheating or misbehaving or showing up late or saying "fuck you, teacher," or like getting called out of class, and like all of them have like warrants for their arrest because they like hit their mom or something, and like in that school they don't get graded for homework, so just no one ever does homework, and but they have like a lot of tests, so they get tested all the time, and so the way that she just talks about it, I'm like, this just feels like a degeneration of our society, but maybe it's just because it's a city school, not to be like, I don't know.
I think so. One of the things that I've been reading about as I've been looking at this Building Better Cities is this idea of like, when you start to rebuild a city, your schools don't matter as much, because honestly, the people who are going to move into the city to restart a neighborhood are young people who need cheap rent. The problem is, as those young people start to age and start having children, they aren't going to want to stay there unless the schools are good. And so long term, you have to accept mediocre and bad schools now, but have a plan in place to build better schools in the next 10 years before those, 20-somethings start having kids. And I think that's just too much of a long game for some people. Would you agree with that, Sean?
I see. I don't know. I guess it's just it all comes back to measures. I just see this as like a measuring problem, because even when we talk about first world problems as like any of them as happiness, stress, property troubles, fatigue, blah blah blah, it all has to do with like a relative definition to something else and comparing something to something else, to this ideal, this form of how it should be. So that's what I mean. It's really weird. Like, even when you said human nature, I kind of reject that as a false measurement. This idea that like distilled in in humans somewhere inside of an animal, that there is something that they are programmed specifically to do, and if you work at this and you philosophize about this and do anything like that, that you can like find this, and you're realizing that you're creating this measure. You're measuring something against an ideal, and I think that's continually it's so hard to break this because you're constantly doing it all the time. Like you can't even think of something outside of that, because in order to think about something outside of that, you use the traditions to get to the outside of it using those traditions. You see what I mean? It's just like it just spins and spins and spins and spins. So you almost have to do this like super diplomatic, like not even that, I don't know what I would say, like you almost have to rework it from the inside to form even slightly better ones. You know what I mean? Because it's just the more that you start taking apart these blocks, you start like kind of dissecting and pulling apart things. I mean, essentially you're doing the same thing that I just kind of railed against there. See what I mean? Like, it's just like,
yeah.
This is what I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it's kind of what the new Ripped comic is on too. So I don't know.
Link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So my final question, how much stock do you personally, I think Sean kind of answered this, how much stock do you guys personally put into these first world problems, and how much do you think we should care about them? Because right now, first world problems is kind of a pejorative term. It's like, oh, my latte's too cold. But do you put stock into these bigger problems of chronic fatigue or, comparative happiness? And do you think it's right that we do that?
I mean,
I think-
yeah.
I'm gonna say no.
All right, Tyler first. Tyler, expand on why you think that we should.
I mean, like you said, it's solving a problem for a future scenario for other people that are going to encounter the same issues. I mean, I can reasonably deduce that countries that enter into the first world will encounter the exact same problems that we have. I mean, they're not going to be exactly the same because there's like 3 countries on our continent, so we don't exactly have the same like geographical problems as a lot of other places do.
And we've also industrialized over a slower period of time, and yeah, there's a bunch of factors.
This is really interesting because I think that Tyler and I said different answers, but I think that we both thought about the question in a different way. Because this is what I should say. I do think we should take stock in first world problems, totally, 100%. I think that the label of first world problems is used as a rhetorical means to shut people up.
Interesting. Expand.
And it's used as a tool by whoever doesn't want to hear it from somebody else, so you can easily lay this, you can easily get some kind of moral superiority out of using the argument, first world problem, like, oh, my latte's too cold, first world problem. Oh, my taxi, my taxi was late, first world problem. It's just like, it's not actually, it doesn't draw you into like a sort of like deep self-reflection that allows you to accurately address the actual problem and think about it in a constructive way. It's just used as a way to shut people up, and it's done really way. Like college campuses, I feel like are ripe with this.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I don't want to get into the whole campus culture debate that's going on in the larger popular culture right now, because it's too late at night for us to dive into that conversation. But I think you bring up an interesting point, which is kind of my thesis on these first world problems, is I think we need to stop shaming people for having problems. And yeah, some problems don't really matter. Like your latte is too cold, not really a problem. You're spending 8 hours a week on top of your job driving to and from your job. That's a problem. That is a real serious problem, because you're not the only person that's spending 8 hours in their car getting to and from your job. Every other person in your city is doing that.
Right. And this is what I mean. Like, this is where the weirdness, the rhetoric awfulness of first world problem comes in. Is in the next line after that is, oh, you spend 8 hours in your car to go into your job? Well, at least you have one. First world problem. You see what I mean? Like, see how weird that, it takes a weird turn from being something that's like, man, we could find some really good, nice, creative solutions to this, into this man, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Right, like how I shut Taylor first podcast.
How dare you?
Yeah, Taylor, how dare you be the only one with a real job and now have a new real job that's also good? Fuck you, buddy.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here.
So, I don't know. I think that's what's weird about first world problems. It's like, should we put stock in them? Oh, yeah, of course we should. These are real problems that we all deal with every day. But we shouldn't let it get carried away. We shouldn't let it get perverted, to shut somebody up, just so so you can feel better about yourself, or take them down a peg. Come on.
Yeah, acknowledge that all human life entails suffering, and try and reduce that suffering for other people.
Right. Oh, couldn't get on the internet for a day? First world problem.
Hui.
All right. Well, I think that's as good a final thought as any for this week. If you have any first world problems that you want to talk about, send us something either on Twitter or use the submit a topic form on the website. Maybe we'll do a little recurring column on people's actual non-latte related first world problems and propose solutions for them. I think that could be an interesting project. In the meantime, we're going to hopefully solve Tyler and Sean's first world problem of underemployment with some shameless plugs.
That's right.
We're going to start off with Sean this week to change things up. Sean, shameless plugs.
Thanks for watching and dealing through the technical difficulties of everything. This week is going to be the culmination of a lot of my weeks of not being productive. So I have a new ripped comic up right now. I forget what it's called. What is it called?
It's called The Lego of the Mind.
Oh, it's called The Lego of the Mind to kind of play on what we were talking about this week a little bit, and kind of this logics question I was kind of getting at. It's kind of naive and sophomoric, but hey, whatever. Everyone's got to get it out somehow. I figure I'd do it kind of creatively. The other thing is I have an article coming out on Monday. It's about why I don't like Star Wars. Challenge me, tell me that I'm wrong, and that it's a great movie. I think I try to do a really good job of presenting an argument that is fairly good. I think. I hope that's kind of what I'm sticking to. So yeah, get on my Twitter and tell me that you love Star Wars and that my article is crap. Evans_emerge. So check it out.
Tyler, shameless plugs from you.
You mean you're not hyped about Star Wars grapes, Sean? What the fuck? He doesn't care. He doesn't care about Yoda grapes. All right. Okay. So you can find my design work at tylerDreed.com. Please visit it because I'm gathering some metrics. Thanks, Squarespace. You do a great job gathering metrics. I'm trying to figure out if my current layout works. I have a homepage with some recent work on it. And I'm trying to see if people are actually interested in looking at those recent works, if that works as an idea, and then have a design and illustration page separately, because I felt like I was starting with illustration first, and then people would only stay on that page. So I'm trying to figure that out. Otherwise, follow me on TDR Design on Twitter and Instagram. Trying to use Instagram more. Trying to post something new every day, some type of art-related thing. Had a bunch of posts about me decorating my Christmas tree. We have a bald eagle as our star. So fuck yeah, America! All right. That's it.
Cool. Well, you can find me on Twitter at TC Olmstead. You can find the show on Twitter at Dudes Brunch. If you made it all the way through this episode, gold star for you. You should give us a review on iTunes. Give us a few stars, but please don't hold our technical difficulties against us. You can also buy Dudes Brunch merch, I think. Don't hold me to this, but I think if you buy your merch this week, which is the week of December 6th, it should show up at your home or shipping address before Christmas. Any later than this week, and I honestly can't make any promises. Other than that, thanks for watching. We'll be back with one more episode in 2015, our special year-end episode with recurring guest Janet Ford, and then we'll take a break and be back with a new season in January. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.